everyone. I am calling this hearing into order. For the record, my name is Kendra Lara, District 6 City Councilor, and I am the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Housing and Community Development. This hearing is being recorded. It's being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. Today's hearing is on docket number 0926, message and order authorizing the City of Boston acting through its Mayor's Office of Housing to apply for, accept, and expend $16,527,831 provided under Section 231 of the Federal Fiscal Year 2020 Appropriations Act for the Continuum of Care program from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. These funds will be used to support programs that provide services and housing to the unsheltered homeless. And docket number 1018, message and order authorizing the City of Boston, acting through its Mayor's Office of Housing, to apply for and to accept and expend the Federal Fiscal Year 2022 Continuum of Care grant funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in an amount not to exceed $45 million. These funds will be used to support programs that provide services and housing to persons experiencing homelessness. We will be taking public testimony at the end of today's hearing. If you are here with us in the chamber, please make sure that you sign up at the sheet near the chamber entrance. And for all testimony, please state your name and neighborhood or affiliation and try to keep your comments to under 2 minutes. Joining us today from the Mayor's Administration, we have Tim Davis, Deputy Director for Policy Development and Research from the Mayor's Office of Housing, and Layla Bernstein, Deputy Director of the Supportive Housing Division, also from the Mayor's Office of Housing. I'd like to acknowledge at this moment that we've been joined by my colleague, Erin Murphy. We're not going to have opening statements for this hearing, but I will turn the floor to the panelists now. Mr. Davis and Ms. Bernstein, you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. I can only see Tim. Tim, can you give me a thumbs up?
Yep.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Layla Bernstein. I am as the counselor said, I'm the Deputy Director for the Supportive Housing Division at the Mayor's Office of Housing, and I use she, her pronouns. I am here to talk about these two grants, which are related in some ways, but also quite distinct. So just for some context, the Mayor's Office of Housing, Supportive Housing Division coordinates funding, policies, and data to end homelessness. We convene partners to design and implement Boston's response system to ending homelessness. And so these two grants are in service of that mission. So the Continuum of Care, which is one of the grants we're talking about today, it's a program of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development designed to provide housing and services for people experiencing homelessness. And as the designated collaborative applicant on behalf of the Boston Continuum of Care, the Mayor's Office of Housing is the lead agency for this grant in Boston. So as the lead agency, we're responsible for leading the funding application and implementing the grant, as well as coordinating the effort to design this housing response to homelessness. So there are two grants we're talking about today, and I apologize if this gets technical. It's really like two bureaucracies within each other. There's the federal government bureaucracy that I'm going to be talking about, and then also the processes that have to happen at the city level. So we're applying to two federal grants, the Continuum of Care, as well as a supplemental funding opportunity that the federal government put out to address unsheltered homelessness. HUD defines unsheltered homelessness as people sleeping outside, in a car, in an abandoned building, or other places not meant for human habitation, like the airport or a train station. So first I'm going to talk about the larger Continuum of Care grant that we're submitting an application for. And this is a little bit over $41 million, or up to a little bit over $41 million. So most of this funding is renewal funding. So every year we have to go in and apply to HUD for this funding, and it is renewing programs. Primarily it is renewing programs that already exist and are already running. So it funds close to 40 programs and provides housing and services to over 2,000 households, including approximately 1,300 households with prior histories of chronic homelessness. So that's long-term homelessness among people with disabilities at any given point in time. So most of this funding is going to pay for continuing to house those individuals who had previously, individuals and families who had previously been homeless. About 10% of this renewal funding will support in meeting the federal requirements to implement the regulations, including collecting and reporting on client-level data and other infrastructure. As part of this grant, we're also applying for new dollars. So if we compete well, get a high score, our performance looks really good as a community, we may be eligible to grow this grant, and that the new dollars are about $3 million, and that will fund new housing programs for families and individuals with disabilities and households fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. So that's the Continuum of Care grant that we're talking about today. The other grant that we're talking about today is a brand new opportunity that we are competing for amongst communities across the country, and we're eligible to apply to the federal government for up to about $16.5 million that, if awarded, would be available over 3 years. So in an annual sense, it'd be between $5 and $6 million a year if we were to receive the entire grant. So because this is new funding, we are in the process of figuring out who would receive the funding if we are awarded this grant from the federal government. So that's why I mentioned that there's kind of two levels of bureaucracy here. So we are currently in an open procurement process, and we've put out a request for proposals, which closed last week, and there is an evaluation committee looking at the proposals that we received. We're going to, as a committee, rate and rank those proposals, and if those get funded, they will pay for permanent housing and or services to serve people who are experiencing homelessness to get them housed. And this grant is focused on people experiencing unsheltered homelessness with really high service needs. So this is to serve people who are the most vulnerable and who are sleeping outside or in places not meant for human habitation. So these are two really important grants. One is a grant we apply for every year and is primarily renewing funding. The other one is a new opportunity that is highly competitive. We may or may not receive the funds, but if we do, it would be new funding for new housing and services for people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. So I'm happy to take questions from the council at this time.
Thank you, Director Bernstein. Director Davis, do you want to share anything about these grants, or are you just here with us to answer questions?
I'm here just to answer questions. Thank you, Councilor Lowe.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And so just to orient everybody who is watching, we are having a conversation about two dockets here. One of them is 0926, and that is the one that is the supplemental grant for unsheltered homelessness, and docket number 1018 is the renewal grant that's coming from the federal government, the Continuum grant. That's up to, it says here that it's up to 45 million, but you said 41 million. Can you clarify the amount for me?
Yeah, so we are not quite sure how much we'll receive because it depends on how we score. We are competing against every community across the country. I think 45 was kind of like a guesstimate before we were deeper into the process. I think at this point we're clear that what we're fine.
Sorry, Director Bernstein, we lost you there. Can you repeat that last sentence?
Oh.
There we go. You're back with us.
I'm so sorry. Should I say that again?
Just the last sentence about why you decided on the 41 million.
Okay, so I think when we submitted 45 million, that was a outside estimate of what it could be. Now that we've been in the process and we've received all the applications for new funding and come up with our exact total, the maximum we're applying for is closer to 41 million, and that's the amount that we hope to receive from the federal government, but it's possible we won't receive that amount. It'll be a little bit less than that, depending on how we rank against other communities.
Okay, thank you so much. That's helpful. I just want to make a note for central staff that we should correct the maximum to 41 million on the committee report.
Yeah, we can get you the exact, I'm using round numbers, so we can get you the exact amount that we're applying for.
Thank you so much. Incredibly grateful. So for the supplemental grant, you talked a little bit about the RFP that was out to, you're still making a decision about which organization the 16.5 million would go to. Can you talk a little bit about what you were looking for in the RFP and what that RFP looks like and where you are in the process and how much longer you think it'll take?
Absolutely. So the RFP was released in early September, and it closed last week. And there are categories that the federal government make allowable for the grant. So the types of activities that nonprofits or units of local government were eligible to apply for included what's called permanent supportive housing, which is long-term subsidized housing paired with services. What's called rapid rehousing, which is short-term or medium-term rental assistance paired with supportive services. So it's shorter-term housing and support services. There are project types in a category called transitional housing, joint transitional housing, rapid rehousing, which is really that same rapid rehousing type activity for people who are first in a kind of program, which is called transitional housing. So it's really kind of, there's a transition between experiencing homelessness, them being somewhere stable, and then having your own lease in the rental market. And then projects could apply for services that connect people to these types of housing. So street outreach or staff that really help with housing search and helping people apply to housing options. So those are the types that applicants could respond to. And you asked about the timeline. So it was the projects or the applications were due to us last week. There's now a review committee that's been formed and kicked off this week. And so there are reviewers looking at each application that we received, creating a score based on a objective scoring tool that was part of the request for proposal and based on what the federal government has said they want to see as the way that we rank projects. And then we will be, as a committee, coming back together to come up with the final rank based on those scores on October 3rd. And then I think we have to submit, I think the deadline to the federal government is on October 4th to let them know which projects we'll be including in the final application.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Two more questions. Do you anticipate that all of these needs for the RFP will be met by one organization, or are you hoping that you'll end up with multiple?
So we have received multiple. I believe we received 8 applications. They may not all get funded, but I don't think any of the I'm certain that none of the applications were as large as the entire grant. So this will be awarded to multiple organizations, not just one organization.
Not just one organization. Okay. So two things, and you might not have this now, but do you have a list, or do you know off the top of your head the names of the people who are the reviewers of the RFP?
It's a fairly large committee. We can get you the list. We can get you the list, but it's comprised of people who work for the city, not just the mayor's office of housing, but their mayor's office staff, central mayor's office staff, and then our consumer advisory council, known as Back Home. So this is a council made up of people with lived experience of homelessness in Boston. They have all volunteered to participate in the review process. So the entire council, which is a group of, I think 8 or 9 people, they're all on the review committee as well.
So there is a representation of people who are formerly unhoused or currently unhoused in the review committee?
Yep.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
It's the entire advisory council. So they're about half of the review committee are people who've experienced homelessness or are currently experiencing homelessness, just like you said. And then, of course, there's some staff who are at the mayor's office of housing or at the mayor's office potentially who may have lived experience of homelessness as well.
Thank you. And my last question before I cede my time to my colleague here. Can you talk a little bit about what the mayor's office of housing's vision is for both of these grants in terms of, like in the city of Boston? I'm sure that you had to write the grant, so you have some kind of like the outcomes probably at the top of mind. And can we start with the Continuum of Care grant and then go to the supplemental one for both of them?
Sure. I mean, all of this funding is really in service of trying to end homelessness in the city through housing. And so the top priority for both of these grants is really, as much as possible, funding housing interventions. And so permanent supportive housing is a top priority, and it has been decided by the community as a top priority for both grants. And so projects that are funding this permanent supportive housing, which is again, long-term subsidized housing. So really it's like housing vouchers similar to any other type of housing voucher, although it's very low threshold, paired with supportive services. That is the priority for both of these grants. And so I expect that, certainly for the Continuum of Care grant, that is the majority of the funding, goes to funding housing vouchers with supportive services. I expect where we will end up at the end of the selection process for the other grant is at least the top ranking projects will be in that category, because we've already decided that as a community, that is the priority.
Thank you so much. I have no further questions. Councilor Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that presentation. As the chair of the new commission to end family homelessness, and also the chair of Public Health, Mental Health, and Homelessness Committee here on the Boston City Council, I am here to support these grant applications, and I'm excited that the Mayor's Office of Housing, all the work you're doing applying for these. And just two comments, excited to hear that you said the first one is one you already have and you're going to grow it, and the second one is a new one you're applying for. So it's, we're at this time with opera funding and the commitment here on the council and in the mayor's office to make sure that most of that money is going to end homelessness is important. So just here to support, and we'll be voting yes to make sure that this goes through at the council meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Before we move on, I do have two letters of absences from two of my council colleagues. The first one is from City Council President Ed Flynn. Dear Councilor Lara, please be advised that I am unable to attend today's hearing on dockets 0926 and 1018 regarding housing grants from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. I will review the tape of the hearing when it becomes available. Thank you for your leadership on this matter. Sincerely, Ed Flynn, Boston City Council President, District 2. And the second letter of absence that I would like to read into the record is a letter from my council colleague, Liz Braden. Dear Chair Lara, I regretfully am unable to attend this morning's public hearing in the Committee of Housing and Community Development to discuss federal Continuum of Care grant funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. HUD funds under review will support outreach, intake, and assessment, emergency shelter, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing initiatives of the city and the Mayor's Office of Housing. I'm confident that these funds will be expended such as to maximize the provision of services and housing opportunities for our neighbors experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. I look forward to reviewing the Chair's report and your recommended action for the disposition of these dockets. Sincerely, Liz Braden, Boston City Councilor, District 9, Alston, Brighton. Now, I want to give the floor over to the panelists in case there's anything else that you want to add before we close out.
No, just very grateful for the support of the council, both for these grants, but also in your advocacy and work to end homelessness. We're always grateful for your support and partnership in that effort.
Thank you so much. Thank you for my council colleague, Erin Murphy, for joining us today. Thank you to everyone at Central Staff for making sure that this hearing happened on such short notice and make sure that we can get this passed so we can expend these funds. And thank you both for making time and being flexible to join us virtually today. This hearing is now adjourned.
Thank you.